I give a little introduction and then Leo will take over. The house was built in 2016 and it was the beginning of this long-term collaboration between Masamuda and Leiden University. There were also many students who have contributed to it. By the time it was finished, the house was empty. There was a little hearth where we found that on the excavation plan of Haamstede Brabers. We had made benches along the side because it had a function to receive school kids. So people had to be able to sit and be comfortable. So that was the way it looked until we started this process because we wanted to do a little more. But first of all, these are all the volunteers. They all continue to maintain the house, and that was one of the first workshops. We did a lot of workshops in this project, and one of the first, I think it was the first, was to teach maintenance and to make sure that the house maintained properly, because the first 5 years we had to do it. But in 2021 we transferred all the rights and obligations, so to speak, to Masamuda, so they had to do it. So the facades was something which really needed new reeds. Every storm would remove some of the reeds there, so that was necessary. The roof had to maintain and put new salts on top. So all this under, like I said, the watchful eye of master builder Leo Wolterbeek, who actually built lots of houses. So maintenance was one thing. But then, just as we really wanted to start furnishing the house, which was one of the objectives of the project, there was storm unity. And on the 18th of February 2022, and I think we were very, very lucky that the house remained standing in a way. So it was basically due partially because many of the posts had already rotten. That was actually quite quick. It was the internal structure that kind of kept it whole, but the fact that the posts were rotten made it leaning over quite considerably, as you see on these pictures.
On the inside, a series of jacks were attached to the wall plate in order to jack this horizontal beam back into its original place. On the outside, strong ropes, one of unredded lime bark made by Eva Ijsveld, were attached to the roof ridge. At a sign of the master builder, the people inside had to push and the ones outside need to pull. This way we succeeded to raise up the construction quite easily in just a few minutes at least. The work wasn't done yet because many of the posts were actually broken during the storm and needed to be replaced. It was also necessary to replace some of the center posts, and of course the walls must be replastered. The storm hit the house sideways, exactly where the horizontal two wall plates supporting the rafters were connected. This certainly turned out to be a weak point in the construction, and the lesson we learned was that we need 3 sections of wall plates, a longer one in the middle and 2 shorter ones toward both ends of the house. Of course, if there is long enough trees to cover the entire length of the house, in our case a little over 9 meters, that would be even better. However, the reason that the house collapsed was basically that the posts were rotten. We had tried in a previous house building experiment at Horsterwold different ways of treating the bottom ends of the posts to evaluate whether charring the post would improve the durability underground. This was not the case. All posts, regardless wood species they were made of, charred or not, bark removed or not, they all started to rot after circa 5 years and therefore need to be replaced. At the Horsterwold house we had already experimented with a technique showing that replacing posts turned out to be far easier than we thought. The whole process only took about 1.5 hours per replacing. Here you can see how it was done. A longitudinal ditch is dug in the direction which you can remove the post. Here along the length of the house, making it slightly deeper causes the decayed post to sink lower, so it's easier to lower it and take it away. The new post can then be slided into the ditch and put into the place. The ditch then also, of course, have to be filled. After the major repair from the storm damage, we could start furnishing the house. In most prehistoric houses, the furniture was built along the walls, something we also did initially because of the educational role of Masamuda. However, we took most of these benches away because we realized that would not have been the way past people would have lived in a structure like this. Together with a group of volunteers, we started to brainstorm how it would be like to actually live in a house like this. especially in cold winter months. Would you sleep on a bench along the wall? No, too cold. Much better sleep huddled together in a sheltered part of the house, not too far from the fireplace. And that is how the corner bed came to be. That's what you see here on the left side. Because we departed from the post holes found on the Haemstede Brabants excavation and no post holes were found in the corner where the bed would have to be built, we thought of another post hole free construction. The bed was made on a series of beams which were put directly on the ground. On top, a bed was made from willow branches with reeds mats piled on top. Yet we kept a part of the long branches along the wall to create more sitting space near the fire in order to accommodate more visitors. Still, the house was large and empty and would be hard to keep heated in the winters. We need to build something in the middle to break up the space. Departing from the post-hole configuration, one of the volunteers proposed a cooking island. You can see the green part on the excavation plan. There are many posts over there. The cooking islands may be a preposterous idea, but very attractive as it would create a space to sit near the fire, to keep the pots and cooking gear and, as you saw in the film, keep one or two long blocks of wood that could be pushed into the fire. Because Diederik and Annelou had observed how kitchens in Tigray in northern Ethiopia were constructed and literally molded in loam, we also did this on the Masamuda house. Above this so-called kitchen island, a small attic was made for storage and drying purposes. We postulated that behind the kitchen island and the eastern part of the house could be shut off by hanging skins along the beams, thereby decreasing a space of the house to be heated. We needed paddles for the dugout and started to split the stem of an ash tree. To our surprise, it turned out that with careful splitting and good quality of wood, you can make beautiful planks. The 7 planks that resulted from this one piece of wood were too good to turn into paddles, so we decided to make a little storage rack in the eastern part of the house, which was still empty. The paddles were made from a less beautiful trunk. The making of the dugout. The film you saw about wood already showed a bit about the first real long-term experiment of the project, to making of a dugout, a big community project entirely carried out by a group of extremely dedicated volunteers over the course of almost a year, occasionally helped by me. The experiment was a scientific one, which means that all tools used in the process were documented in terms of activity carried out with them, the time they were used and who were using it. It started with the arrival of a large oak segment in the center, weighing more than 2 tons and measuring about 6 meters length. As one end considered of a huge knot, the stem was shortened, making the vessel 5.57 meters long. The first task was shaping the bottom, removing slabs of wood by making incisions and then inserting wedges so that slabs of wood could be removed. The bottom then was chiseled into shape. When this was finished, the dugout needed to be turned around, and after again slabs of wood were removed by the same technique. Then the long process of holing out the boat began. Stone and flint axes were crucial in this process. Of course, things sometimes went wrong, so small repairs were done. The cracks from drying were coated with wild boar fat, twisted lime bark and sphagnum, and then the boat was ready for action. We quantified all those tool use, with everyone keeping time in using an experimental tool. Total amount of time for use was 32,841 minutes, and that's about 547 hours, about 68 working days, and that's 3 people work for 4 weeks. In the past, probably it was somewhat faster, but because making the dugout lasted for almost a year, on every Saturday the wood dried out and was much harder to work. This would not have happened in the past, when it was done in a more concentrated period, probably. Also, it is not an easy job. Some of the volunteers became extremely experienced at axe yielders. They were probably not at par with their prehistoric counterparts. Therefore, we think that 3 experienced boat builders could have done the job in about 2 weeks or so. The flint axes were certainly the most important implement, with 18,447 minutes of work, followed by the flint edges. Antler wedges were used frequently, but the majority of the wedges were wood, split from a thick slab taken off the dugout. As these quickly worn out and not were kept, they are not represented in this table. In 2023, some money was available to build a small structure on the basis of a plan of excavated at Den Haag Wateringse Binnentuinen, located on the coastal barriers. House Plan 11 had a semicircular shape with a date of 2900 before Christ, predated the large settlement a little further south. In the front of the hut is a large fire pit, possibly protecting the people against wild animals, but it also could have served as a place to smoke or dry, for example, fish. For this reconstruction, local materials were used. The post and the walls plate were made from oak, willow and elder, and the rafters from willow, which were attached to the plates with lime bark bindings. The walls were made with upright reeds fixed between thin willow stems, and the conical roof was covered with mats of woven reeds. The total labor input amounted to 77 hours. This would mean that it would require 2.5 days for 4 people, 3 long days with 3, and about a week if there were only 2 people available. They wouldn't have needed a lot of tools. Most important would be a large stone or flint axe, a digging stick, and a tool for harvesting reed. The hut was interpreted as a seasonally occupied dwelling by the excavators, possibly used to get familiar with the landscape and assess to the possibilities for permanent settlement. It thus played a role in our ideas about mobility, connectivity, about which Lasse and his colleagues will speak more after this talk. Masamuda has an important educational role in the larger Rotterdam area, with school classes regularly visit the center and learning about daily life in the past. The hut is one of their favorite places to learn about prehistoric craft like rope making. The center also has a role in the community, with volunteers getting together to maintain the yard and the houses. The project organizes several workshops and different craft activities, something that is now continued by the center itself, ensuring a continual participation of children and adults in learning about daily life in the past.